Hi. So this is a special occasion. I don't normally do this sort of thing. It's my first time, okay? Normally what I do for each book that we produce in here is we do a story time episode and we do a sample, a promo, and that's the same sample you get to hear on Audible too. But there's a nice little picture behind it, and we have those, and that's what I do to promote the books that I work on. It's a pretty cool little system. But today I had kind of a situation where I've already posted up a story time for the book we're working on. Take a look at this book. This one right here. This is book 2 in the Foster Brothers series by the great USA best-selling Times, whatever, Nora Phoenix. She's fantastic. Anyways.
Pay us.
So normally I do one story time, but I ran into a situation here with this one where I did the story time and it was pretty good. It was like chapter 1 and it wasn't bad. They had a little meet cute deal going on, but then I just did a chapter in this book. I think it was, what were we on? Chapter 6. In chapter 6, I ran into a situation where the chemistry between the two characters is fucking hot. And the characters are Hadley and Sebastian. Sebastian's a billionaire boss that owns a robotics company, and Hadley is the personal assistant, PA. So I encourage you, if you've already watched the story time for this one already, the first one I did, watch the second one. Watch this one because the chemistry between them is fantastic. I'm not going to bother reading the blurb again. I've already done it once. But just check this out. This is chapter 6. There really aren't any spoilers happening or anything like that, but I love the chemistry and I thought I would share it with you. Love y'all. Peace. 6. Sebastian massaged his temples as he rode the elevator up to the 64th floor. The 2 ibuprofens he had taken had dimmed his headache a little, but only enough to make it bearable. He should have opted for sleep the night before, but instead he had enough to make it bearable. He should have opted for sleep the night before instead of inviting some twink over to his hotel room and spending half the night fucking him. He'd been cute and more than willing to take whatever Sebastian had dashed out, but it hadn't resulted in the relaxation Sebastian had hoped for. In hindsight, sleep would have been smarter. He was running late, and that damn headache wouldn't retreat, and he wasn't sure which one of those 2 pissed him off more. The elevator dinged, and he got off. Hadley stood waiting for him, holding out Sebastian's coffee. Despite his pounding head, Sebastian could, as always, appreciate the sight of him. He filled out those tight-fitting pants so nicely. "Good morning, Mr. Leclerc." He eagerly took the coffee from him. "I'm in desperate need of caffeine." "That seems to be your default." Was it? Hadley was probably right. Nothing wrong with drinking coffee, though, right? Sebastian walked into his office, looking over his shoulder when Hadley's footsteps followed him. "Do you need anything?" He turned around and found Hadley studying him, biting his lip. "It can wait until after your coffee." Sebastian took a careful sip of his coffee. How did Hadley manage to get it exactly at drinking temperature when Sebastian showed up? The man was a genius. "I'm in meetings pretty much all day, so if you want something from me, now would be the right time to ask." Hadley took a deep breath, then straightened his shoulders. "Work. That's what I need from you. Something to do." Another sip of his coffee as his brain tried to process Hadley's words.
Another sip of coffee.
Well, he didn't take somebody else's coffee, did he? "Work. That's what I need from you. Something to do." "Work. That's what I need from you. Something to do." Another sip of coffee as his brain tried to process Hadley's. "Work. That's what I need from you. Something to do." Another sip of coffee as his brain tried to process Hadley's words. "What do you mean?" "I'm your assistant, correct?" "If you have to ask me that after working here for a week, you're not quite as skilled at this job as I assumed." "That means my job is to assist you," Hadley said, ignoring Sebastian. "It's hard for me to do that when I don't know what you need." "We went over this last week. I don't have the time to tell you how to do your job. I thought you were experienced at this." "I am. But what I do for every client is different, and I need you to tell me what you want me to do for you. How can I make your life easier?" God, he really should have chosen sleep over that twink. His head was pounding. "I know." "Yeah, sure." God. His head was pounding. "I have no fucking clue what you want from me. None of the other assistants have ever asked that question. I thought part of the job description was that you could work independently, that you were a self-starter, to use a nice management word. Hadley's jaw ticked. I'm starting to understand why you went through 22 assistants in the last 2 years. It's impossible to do a job well when I don't know what the job entails. Assist me. That's your fucking job. I don't know how else to put it. Hadley's face softened, something much kinder filling his expression. You're serious. What gave it away? Have you ever seen me make a joke? My apologies for the misunderstanding, sir. We'll continue this conversation at a later time, one that's more convenient for you. In the meantime, good luck with all your meetings. I'll have your 11 o'clock coffee and banana bread ready for you as always. On the lunch menu today is butternut squash soup with the quinoa salad. Before Sebastian could say anything else, Hadley sent him a big smile, then walked out, closing the door of the office behind him. What the hell had just happened? Somewhere, somehow, something had shifted, but Sebastian didn't understand what. Hadley had come to a conclusion of some kind, but what? It was too early for this crap. Besides, he had much better things to worry about than his assistant, even when he was strangely disappointed that it looked like Hadley wouldn't work out either. He'd really thought that maybe this time he'd struck gold. But of course, he'd been wrong. He had such infernal bad luck with assistants. With a deep sigh, he sat down behind his desk and booted up his computer. He'd better get his mind off Hadley and focus on the endless schedule of meetings he had to power through. Maybe if he worked hard, he could make some time to work on his latest idea for an automated snowblower he had already labeled the Snow Buddy in his mind. At least finding the necessary documents would be much easier after Hadley had reorganized their file system, both online and the paper files. If nothing else, he'd been worth the money for that, and Buck knew Leclerc paid their employees well, way above market rates, even temp ones hired through an agency. The day flew by as he checked off meeting after meeting, grateful for the supply of coffee and food that Hadley provided. By 4, he was done, and with relief he headed back to his office. He needed more ibuprofen to keep that fucking headache at bay, and then, hopefully, he could work uninterrupted for an hour or two and catch up on email. Well, there would be no catching up, but at least he wouldn't let the backlog get any bigger. And maybe, just maybe, he could manage half an hour to work on the Snow Buddy. As soon as he had sat down behind his desk, a knock on the door sounded. He groaned. Enter. Hadley stepped inside. Oh, okay, not as bad as he had feared. He could deal with Hadley. At least it wasn't somebody who wanted something from him. What's up? Hadley walked toward his desk and put a piece of paper in front of him. I've made a list of all the potential tasks I can do for you. It occurred to me that maybe you don't have a real understanding of what a good PA can. What's up? Hadley walked toward his desk and put a piece of paper in front of him. I've made a list of all the potential tasks I can do for you. It occurred to me that maybe you don't have a real understanding of what a good PA can do for you. What the hell? Sebastian had worked with PAs and secretaries ever since he joined his father's firm. Of course he knew what they could do. Still, he looked at the list, if only to be polite. Create PowerPoint presentations, prepare meetings, handle phone calls, organize meetings and events, manage diaries and schedules, arrange travel, write reports, summarize reports, do basic research, handle all correspondence and email. The list went on and on. Sebastian sat up straight, frowning. Hadley was joking, right? There was no way he could do all that. He picked a random item from the list. You expect me to believe that you can write reports for me? I scored an A+ on my bachelor's thesis, which was far more in-depth and complicated than a report. I assure you I can write whatever you need me to as long as someone can check the technical content. Sebastian frowned. I don't understand. You have no background in engineering. How can you write technical reports? We're not talking about research reports here, though even those I could summarize. I don't need to know how the technology behind the MoBuddy works, for example, to understand what it does. I'm quite proficient with Google and other forms of research. You have a bachelor's degree? In what? History. My final report was an analysis of the military decisions made on D-Day, June 6, 1944, and how they influenced the outcome. Okay, Sebastian hadn't been expecting that. I didn't realize you needed a degree for this job. And even then, I would have thought you'd have a degree in, I don't know, English Lit or something. I don't, though I know several assistants who do, like Caitlin. Caitlin. Who the fuck was Caitlin? The girl I'm replacing? Right. He couldn't honestly be expected to remember her name, especially not with this... Oh, fuck you, I forgot and brought L3 in the booth, and that was a mistake. Alright, there. Caitlin. Who the fuck was Caitlin? The girl I'm replacing? Right. He couldn't honestly be expected to remember her name, especially not with this blinding headache. Come to think of it, was she coming back? She's not coming back, is she? You're staying. Hadley shook his head. No, I'm only here until she's recovered. It'll be another week, but then she'll be back. Oh. What if he didn't want her back? Was that not an option? It had to be. He wasn't even sure what agency Caitlin and Hadley were from. Beryl had arranged that, one of the few things she did do for him, probably because without an assistant she'd be forced to do more. Anyway, all of us at the agency are qualified for these jobs. If we weren't, we wouldn't be working at this level. I thought being an assistant was more about getting me coffee, arranging for lunch, dropping off my dry cleaning, booking meeting appointments, and shit like that. It can
Stop
be.
booking meeting rooms.
Agency are qualified for these jobs. If we weren't, we wouldn't be working at this level. I thought being an assistant was more about getting me coffee, arranging for lunch, dropping off my dry cleaning, booking meeting rooms, and shit like that. It can be, but we're capable of much more than that. Sebastian looked at the list again. Email. Hadley could handle his email. His father had mentioned an assistant could do that, even though Beryl never had for him. That much Sebastian was certain of. Then again, his father had preferred to communicate by phone or in person. He wasn't a big email guy. The company had also been much smaller, so the volume wouldn't have been the same. You can handle my email? Yes. How? Half the stuff you'd have no idea what it was about. And if I have to explain everything, I might as well do it myself. I can learn. Anything that's obvious I can tackle right away. The rest I'll ask you to clarify or decide if it's something. If I have to explain everything, I might as well do it myself. I can learn. Anything that's obvious I can tackle right away. The rest I'll ask you to clarify or decide that it's something you'd... If I have to explain everything, I might as well do it myself. I can learn. Anything that's obvious I can tackle right away. The rest I'll ask you to clarify or decide that it's something you'd need to answer yourself. And you've done this for other clients? Yes. Most of my clients prefer I stay on top of their email, as it can so easily get out of hand. Tell me about it. Sebastian muttered, thinking of the 10,000 emails in his inbox. Look, I understand this is a new step for you, and it makes sense you'd be a little apprehensive. So why don't we do a trial this week? At the end of the week, we can evaluate whether I did a good job. That way, you can determine if this is something you'd want Caitlin to do in the future. It would save him so much time. God, if he didn't have to worry about his email, the thought alone eased some of the tight band around his head. He got up from his chair, restless energy propelling him. Hadley watched his every move. How would this work? Hadley widened his eyes as if he hadn't expected that question. It's quite simple. I add your email to the email client on my computer and go through it. We'd have to come up with a system so you'd know what's already been handled and what's not. It's quite simple. I add your email to the email client on my computer and go through it. We'd have to come up with a system so you'd know what's already been handled and whatnot. Sebastian snorted. What's been handled? That's a short list. I have over 10,000 emails in my inbox. Hadley gasped. That's a figure of speech, right? An exaggeration? Sebastian leaned over his desk, booted up his Mac from the sleep mode, and gestured Hadley over. They stood so close the heat radiating from Hadley's body warmed him, his subtle smell invading his nose. What would he taste like? Feel like? For some reason, Sebastian wanted to know if Hadley was as bossy and cheeky during sex as he was in the office. Sebastian was usually in charge during his sexual encounters, but he wouldn't mind at all letting Hadley tell him what to do in bed. Jesus, why had his mind gone down that road again? It wasn't like he wasn't getting off, so to speak. Focus. He needed to focus. He had serious problems to deal with. He cleared his throat. 10,254 emails as of this moment. Hadley's hand flew to his mouth as he stared at the numbers, blinking a few times. Sebastian looked back at his screen, his stomach sinking as Hadley's utter shock registered. He shifted. Back at his screen, his stomach sinking as Hadley's utter shock registered. He shifted, then straightened himself again. Back at his screen, his stomach sinking as Hadley's utter shock registered. He shifted, then straightened himself again. I know it's not good. I try to keep up, but hold on. You've never had an assistant handle your email? Ever? Sebastian was feeling like an idiot, and he didn't care for that at all. Beryl never did it for my father. With all due respect, Mr. Leclerc, but she's not the standard I aspire to. An excellent point, and so politely made. None of the others have ever brought it up. If you reacted in the same way to them asking questions about their job as you did to mine, I can understand why. Sebastian frowned as he sat down on the edge of his desk, Hadley standing opposite him. Was that a dig at me? Hadley crossed his arms. If you have to ask me that, you're not quite as smart as I thought. Fuck, that snotty, almost haughty tone was hot. Though why, Sebastian had no idea. Wait, that expression sounded familiar. But where had he heard it before? Then it clicked. You're using my own words against me. If the shoe fits. I like the shoes I'm wearing just fine. Where do you get off criticizing me? You do remember I'm your boss, right? Hadley shrugged. You're Caitlin's boss. I'm only here for another week, so I'm not sure what you could threaten me with. Fire me? Nah. If you wanted to do that, you would have done so already. The cheek in that statement was unparalleled, and yet Sebastian couldn't call him out for being wrong. He probably shouldn't, but he liked Hadley's attitude, appreciated him pushing back rather than rolling over. Not that he would ever tell him that. I can't afford to fire you. Beryl said that if I chased off another assistant, the agency would end the contract with Leclerc. The second he had said it, he realized the power he'd given Hadley with that information, and indeed a big grin split Hadley's face open. Well, that just proves my point. Sebastian rubbed his temples. I'm tired, so can we get this over with? Let me take care of your email for you, Sebastian. Sebastian all but jolted at the sound of his name. Let me take care of your email for you, Sebastian. Sebastian all but jolted at the sound of his name on Hadley's lips. Hadley didn't correct himself, so had he even registered what he had said? Probably not, but Sebastian didn't care. In fact, he liked it. It seemed almost seductive coming from Hadley. What the hell did that say about Sebastian that his mind had once again gone to the gutter? Not something he had the energy to ponder at the moment. If it makes you happy, have at it.